Um, all right. So I wanted to welcome everybody. We had 72 people. The last I checked, it could have gone up this morning, but I let Liz know earlier that we had 72 people sign up for today's webinar. And this is the first that the ARC Georgia has done, this type of webinar. So that's telling me that this is information that we need. Right, Liz? She's hearing about this from all over the country. So my name's Stacy Ramirez. I am the state director of the ARC Georgia, going into my fifth year of doing this incredibly awesome work. Excuse the beeps in the background. I was so fearful of not letting someone in the waiting room. I turned on this sound that I will figure out how to turn it off before we're done. But the rest of the story is I'm a mom of three amazingly gorgeous young men, and now I have a beautiful daughter-in-law, I should say brilliant daughter-in-law. It's my middle son who brings me to this conversation with Liz and with you. My son, now 27, has autism, and he had brought me to my work of inclusive communities because he has always demanded that we will be with our community. Homeschool, in community, in a beautiful way. It's pushed me in ways I didn't expect, and sometimes I didn't want, because it's not always easy. And I know I use this comment a lot, but preaching to the choir with, if you're on this call, you've probably experienced those same things. So for me now, I'm looking at, Ryan's 27, looking at what that next means. So I'm so grateful for Liz for joining us to give us this 101, part one of this 4-part series. And before I turn it over, Liz, I would be remiss if I didn't shout out about the ARC Georgia. We have a grant through the Southern Law Poverty Center, and it's with many other advocates to address voter, I almost said suppression, oops, I did. In South Georgia, we're working with communities of color to help get out and vote. So you'll hear a lot more about that. And I think Dominique was going to, oh, she turned off the beep. She's so awesome. So Dominique Smith is my partner in crime, who will be in the background helping us with some logistics. And she was able to turn off our beep. But she'll be putting these links in the chat as we build our conversation. So the first one, Dominique, if you would let everybody know about our web page for the How to Vote Remote, so you can go there and check your registration, make sure your registration matches your ID, and then get an absentee ballot. All right, I'm going to be quiet and go on mute, video mute, and learn from the expert. Thank you for joining us, Liz.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Liz Mahar. I'm the Director of Family and Sibling Initiatives at the ARC's National Office. Our office is in Washington, D.C., but I'm coming from you, like many of us, from my home here in Alexandria, Virginia. I have been at the ARC now for a little over 6 years. And what brought me to the ARC was this program, the Future Planning Program. You'll see our resources. I'll talk through our resources later on in the presentation. But first and foremost, what brought me to the ARC was my sister, Crystal. She has Down syndrome. So this mission is very near and dear to my heart. So as Stacy mentioned, today we're going to be talking about future planning. This is going to be the first in a 4-part webinar series that the ARC of Georgia has put together for the month of October. I know October we refer to as spooky season, but I don't want this topic to be spooky. It's, you know, as Stacy said, you know, when we're planning for the future of our loved one, when we are working to make sure that our loved one has what they need on a day-to-day basis, we are forced to sometimes do and feel things that we don't want to, or we're not prepared to face as we're supporting them. So, today it's really a 101 overview, background on future planning. What does that term future planning mean? Before I came to the ARC, I was helping my family with a lot of this work for my sister, but the term future planning was just, I think there's a lot of jargon around that term, but it's very important for you as a caregiver to know what that means. And then I'm going to provide an overview on what's in a future plan. I know we only have an hour today, but it's going to be a very quick overview. And I know there's 3 other sessions planned for the rest of this month. And I want to make sure that you walk away today knowing what's involved in a future plan, the comprehensive overview. And then I'm going to talk through the ARC's future planning resources, our website, and all of the resources that we have available for free. So as I mentioned, what brought me to the ARC was my sister, Crystal. Some pictures here from our fun times together. Crystal is a young woman who lives at home with my mom. She is 34 years old. Crystal is very fierce, sassy, but has the heart of gold. And my experience as a sibling is what brought me to the ARC. Crystal, growing up, my parents always said, when you all are adults, Liz, you're going to take care of Crystal. And I said, absolutely. This is as Crystal's, well, there's about a 5-year age gap. So I think when I was 5 or 6, my parents just started having this very general conversation about how I was going to take care of her. And I was always prepared for that. And I was always very protective of her, and still to this day. But I didn't really know what that quite meant. I just knew that I figured that when I was 18, I was going to be an adult and I was going to have all these answers. But as we all know, when you turn 18, you still don't have all the answers. I still don't have all the answers today. So I said, absolutely. And then about 15 years ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And he passed away about 15 years ago this month. And I got the notice. I was living out here in DC already. I went to school out here in Washington, DC. And my family's in California, and that's where Crystal and my mom still live today. And they said, your dad's diagnosed with stage 4. We need you to come home. And so I just kind of picked up, I moved out back home for about 2-3 months as I supported my family. At the time, Crystal was about 19 years old. And she was actually about to transition out of public school. She was in transition school. Besides getting services through public school, Crystal was not connected to the regional center, which is the service system in California. She did not get any early intervention services because when she was born, doctors recommended to my parents that she be put away at an institution. And this was in 1986. So because of that experience, my parents were very hesitant. I remember when she was first put in public school at the age of 3 or 4, they were very hesitant to even send her to school, especially my mom. My mom's originally from Guatemala. So, they were very scared of that. So, she missed out on a lot of services growing up. Fortunately, we had really great teachers supporting her who were able to help me figure out how to connect her to the service system in California, so then she can access services now as an adult. I was trying to figure out what was going on with my dad, everything that, I'm sure you all know if you've ever taken care of a loved one going through a serious illness or death. There was a lot that I had to manage at the age of 24. And then, on top of that, having to figure out the alphabet soup of the disability service system. Fortunately, we were able to connect Crystal to a really great program. It took a couple years, took about maybe 3 to 5 years for Crystal to really be settled in a place that she was happy at, a place where she can thrive. She does, before COVID, she was going to a day program every day. And as part of the day program, she had a job at a senior center, which she absolutely loved. I visited her at work a couple times when I'm back home, because she always asks me, she's very proud of her work, and she always asks me to come visit. And she's really great with seniors. She loves children. She loves drawing, reading, and I've been really impressed with Crystal over the years of how she's really been able to teach herself a lot. Her reading comprehension, her reading level, her literacy levels were very low when she came out of public school, but over the years I've noticed that she's been able to teach herself how to better read and write. So Crystal is my heart, and I am really thrilled to be here today to be able to share the resources that we have at the ARC. So what is the ARC? Some of you may or may not know what the ARC is, but just so we all are clear about how the ARC started. The ARC was started 70 years ago by families, just like all of us here today, that were told, just like my parents were told when Crystal was born, that their loved one, that their son or daughter would not be able to thrive and have a happy place or have an independent life in the community. They have a disability. The only option was an institution. These were family members that said, no, we want something better for our son or daughter. They will thrive. People said no to them, and they said yes. And so the ARC at its core is a grassroots movement. We've been around for 70 years. We have over 600 chapters around the country, and we serve more than 1 million people with IDD and their caregivers throughout the country. We have 13 chapters in Georgia. We're very fortunate to have leadership in Stacy and Dominique on the state level, but I know they work very closely with our local chapters. And I know Stacy and I were talking yesterday, and she mentioned that the silver lining of COVID, I know this has been a really challenging time for everyone, but I like to find some silver linings. And I know Stacy was saying that through COVID, it's been great for her because she's connected more with her local chapters. And so I think that collaboration is really important right now, but it's going to make the chapter network in the state of Georgia and the services and advocating for people with disabilities in Georgia even better. And so what I like to say is that if you've met one chapter of the ARC, you've met one chapter of the ARC. And by that, I mean that you live in Georgia, but you may go to California and New York and go to a chapter of the ARC, and the services and the programs that they provide might look a little different. We have some chapters like in New York who are large service providers that run group homes or day programs. And then you have some chapters that are what I like to say lean and mean. And they're more of a volunteer basis or a smaller staff. And they are more than likely not running those, they're not a large service provider. So the beauty of that is that our chapters to this day are still very grassroots to its nature. And that's what's wonderful about working in the national office, is that I get to work with all of these chapters around the country, but you'll see that our resources for the Center for Future Planning are very broad and big picture in nature. So I'm able to provide a chapter that might be a large service provider with another tool in their toolbox, but then I can work with a smaller chapter who might not have a lot of programming around future planning, but I can provide them with the resources and point them to those resources, and they're able to take advantage of that. So what is future planning? I referenced this earlier, and just so we all are very clear about the definition of future planning, it's basically, just like all of us, we're all planning for the future. We always have that 5-10 year long-term plan, and it's no different than for a person with a disability. It's making sure that a person with a disability has the plan in place that they need to lead a good life, to lead an independent life and a happy life. And it's really important throughout all stages of life. But it's really important, especially after that caregiver or the parent or the family member that does provide that intense level of support is no longer able to provide that support. We like to say that as soon as there's really no late time to start planning, but we want to make sure we catch people sooner rather than later. And I know that people, especially with younger families, when I talk to them, they're very focused on a lot of other needs. But it's important just to start familiarizing yourself with what are the elements that are included in a future plan. So I'm doing a lot of talking right now, and I'll be doing more talking later in the presentation, but I want to hear from all of you. I want to make sure that even though we've all been sitting in front of our Zoom video chats, computers a lot more since March, but I want to make sure that this is interactive. So a question that I have for the audience here that I want you to take a couple minutes to think through and respond to in the chat box is, what are the barriers or challenges that you face when planning for the future of your loved one with a disability? So as I mentioned, just, take a couple minutes, think through this question, and if you wouldn't mind responding in the chat box, and we can maybe regroup, maybe let's say a little bit less than 5 minutes, like in the next 3 minutes, and type your response in the chat box, please.
So Liz, real quick, this is Stacy Ramirez. We had someone ask, would you mind repeating the question,
Sure.
please?
So the question is, what are the barriers or challenges that you face when planning for the future of your loved one with a disability? So if we can just take the next couple of minutes to think through that question and respond in the chat box, please. So I see a lot of great responses, and I'm loving this. So I'm just gonna I'm going to look through the responses here. And the question was, what are the barriers or challenges you face when planning for the future of your loved one with a disability? Some responses that we are seeing here is fear of who will support my son when I am no longer able to provide that level of support, and will they have the same respect for his independence? That's a really good one. Will the care be as good or better? Income limits, so a lot around finances. Housing, where is my son gonna live after he can no longer live with me? Misinformation, a lot of changing information, that's true. Working with siblings on making a plan, getting approved for Medicaid waivers, and that's also a challenge because there's a lot that's out of our control there, and that can be frustrating. I completely understand that. Difficulty with finding information related to my situation. Who will take care? There are no siblings. Who will take care of my son? Lack of knowledge. So what I love about doing this presentation, when Stacey asked me if I was interested in doing this presentation, what I love about this presentation is that, I completely understand. I'm a sibling. I know that what I feel is going to be different than what, Stacey feels. And we all have different feelings around this, but we all have different fears. But at the end of the day, Sometimes you can really feel alone in this. But I like to ask this question because, especially when you're in person, but I think virtually, we've been doing this virtual video calls for quite a while now. So, I really think the peer support is important. And then you start to see the responses and look around the room or look around the virtual room and think, wow, I'm not the only one who's worried about all the changing information, or I'm not the only one who has the fear that, for me, when I talk to siblings, I'm not the only one who's feeling this or going through this situation, or I have a friend who's a sibling that has dealt with this before. So, it's really this question. I want you to feel like we're all in the same boat together. We're all in it together. And as you can see, there's nearly 1 million families around the country where there's an adult with IDD living with an aging family member, and there's just no plan in place. And all of you really nicely outlined what those barriers are and what those challenges are: the lack of information, or the changing information, or even if the information's out there, it sounds like alphabet soup. There's all this jargon, and it's really, kind of working through that clutter and figuring out what's important to me in my situation. And sometimes you have to just take bite-sized pieces. Difficulty addressing emotional issues. I think we all have our emotions in this, and I completely respect that. But Stacy, you so nicely said at the beginning, I wish my mom could hear that because that's one thing where we struggle in my family, is addressing my mom's emotional issues, because a lot of times we as caregivers don't want to think about that time where we may or may not be there for our loved one with a disability. And that's really hard to face. But we can't let our own selves get in the way of ourselves and in the selves of making sure that our loved one has the support that they need. And then the unavailability of services or distrust of the service system. A lot of services, wait lists, that a lot is out of our control, but what's not out of our control is advocating for, full funding of Medicaid, or advocating if you're not connected to the ARC Georgia's email lists, their public policy list, or the ARC national office. I highly encourage you, and Stacy or Dominic, if you wouldn't mind putting those links in the chat of the ARC Georgia and the ARC Nationals advocacy email list. There's a lot of advocacy that is happening, information that you can do, in your home or from your phone. Call your member of Congress, call your state representative, email them. I used to work for a member of Congress in DC, and I used to run the legislative correspondence system. And so whenever we hit a certain limit, the members want to know what are my constituents saying. So they work for you. So advocating, that's, even though you might feel like, there's these wait lists, what can I do? What I say is advocate. And that's the best that you can do to make sure that your loved one, that their voices and support them in advocating as well. Difficulty of affording services of attorneys and other professionals. There are a lot of misconceptions that you need an attorney to plan for the future. There are parts of future planning that do involve an estate planner or an attorney, but not every piece. So, I really want you to walk away from this today, because I am going to share a lot of resources later on in the presentation that don't require you to sit down with an attorney or with an estate planner or a financial planner. So, just getting that information for free, I think, is important and is a good place to start. So I am going to, as I mentioned, in the next couple weeks, there's going to be a huge emphasis around a lot of the financial pieces of future planning for this webinar series. But I want to make sure that you walk away today knowing what the elements are, what the big picture is, what the comprehensive plan is, and what's involved. So I'm going to talk through these very quickly, but I want to make sure that you are aware of what's included in a future plan. So it's expressing wishes for the future. That's the actual plan and the planning process. Deciding where to live, it's housing, financing the future, supporting major and daily life decisions, employment and daily activities, and making social connections. So the letter of intent is the planning process. That is the plan. We also like to say expressing wishes for the future, because what's really important is that you are making sure that this conversation is about the person, and that you are talking to the person in your life with a disability who you're planning for. So the letter of intent is the actual plan. You don't need an attorney to create one. We later on in the presentation, I'm going to walk through our Build Your Plan tool, which is meant to be a guide for you to plan for the future and actually create the plan. But we also have a hard copy template of a letter of intent that if you're not comfortable with putting your information online, you can use this template to just write down what the plan is. What's included in the plan? What's the person's education history, medical history, what medication are they taking, doctors, where do they live? It's really a full scan, a blueprint of the person's life. Important holiday traditions, anything that is in the person's day-to-day that makes their life independent, but also very full. And it's also the process in itself of making sure that you identify important and trusted people in the person's life to help support them. COVID's been really, really difficult for all of us. For me, I haven't seen my family since last November, since Thanksgiving, and I probably won't see them until next summer, which is really hard. But I have some family friends and family members that live near my mom and sister that are able to check in on them. And the beauty of that is there are some things that I have to do to support them, but there are other things that what we like to call the future planning team can support my sister. So she has what she needs. I know recently she had some issues with her phone, and her job coach, who's been, in touch with her every week, was able to drive her there. That's something that I can't do right now. But her job coach is part of the future planning team. And we have cousins that regularly keep in touch with her, just, to make sure that she's not feeling isolated in general, but especially right now, keeping in touch with family and friends is so important for everyone. Housing. This is, when we think about housing, we think about the brick and mortar. Where's the person going to live? Are they going to live in the family home? Are they going to live independently? Are they going to live in a group home or in an apartment with roommates or cousins or other friends? And how are we going to pay for that? But what we didn't think about, we were so focused on that, but in the last couple of years, we've been visiting some group homes just to see what they look like in California. My sister as I mentioned, lives at home with my mom. But when my mom isn't able to provide that level of support, we've been having serious conversations about, Crystal, do you want to move out here to Virginia with me and Brian? Brian's my husband. And she's, sometimes she says yes, and other times she says, no, I want to move to Hollywood. So, depending on what day of the week you ask her that question, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are viewing all the options with her. And what we didn't think about until we started, really seriously having this discussion is the importance of what's around Crystal, what's around the brick and mortar of the home. So right now she lives at home with my mom. She and my mom don't drive, but they live across the street from a CVS. They live within maybe a couple blocks of 4 grocery stores. That's really important because, there's a park nearby. So Crystal's been doing a lot of walking since COVID, but, when she feels comfortable, but, she doesn't have to rely on other people to get groceries. Right now I've been helping them with Instacart because of COVID, but in general, she can walk across the street to CVS and get her medication. She can go to the grocery store if she needs something. She doesn't have to rely on someone. So, there's the senior center is less than a mile away, so it's close to her job. So these are just, thinking through that, we do have a housing checklist that, Stacy, I'll make sure I send that to you. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's something that I'd like to share with the group. And it's something that when you're thinking through options of housing, what's important to the person, what are the needs that the person has, not only in the home to live happy and independently, but in the community. And then financing the future. This is, kind of the big one that we all think about. I think right next to housing is, are there funds available to pay for the basic and supplemental needs of the person? Financial planning is really, plays a big role in future planning, but again, it's not the only piece of future planning. And so you really need to, think through this, what I like to say, this puzzle. It's, making sure that that you're able to support your loved one with knowing what public benefits are available to them, what they're entitled to. But we all know that the benefits are very limited. Does the person want to work? Does your loved one want to work? And making sure that that doesn't interfere or jeopardize with the public benefits or any waivers that they receive, any services they receive. So what are the appropriate public benefits? What are the private resources? ABLE accounts and special needs trusts, which I will talk through next, but are going to be the topics of conversation the next couple webinars in the next couple weeks. Special needs trusts and ABLE accounts are ways for a person with a disability to save their private resources without jeopardizing public benefits. And, every state has different rules. So I will not go through specifically Georgia because I know that in the next couple of weeks, those topics will be covered. So ABLE accounts, they're pretty new. I believe in the last 6 years, ABLE accounts have been available. And what they are tax-free savings accounts that allow people with disabilities to save for disability-related expenses without jeopardizing their eligibility for public benefits, for means-tested benefits such as SSI, Medicaid, potentially Medicare. And what I mean by disability-related expenses, these are, assistive technology, any health and wellness, so if there's like a gym membership, educational expenses, transportation expenses, anything related to housing or any legal fees. The beauty of the ABLE account and the big difference between the ABLE account and a special needs trust or a pool trust is that the ABLE account very much acts also like a checking account. So the person, and I'm not sure about Georgia, but I think just generally, typically what I've seen in different states is that the person will have a debit card. So they can use that and they make the decision on how they navigate their money. And I know a lot of parents, when I've done this presentation, have said, well, what if they overspend? What if they misuse the funds? And I say, well, you know what? I had a debit account when I was in college and I was overspending and misusing funds. So with or without disabilities, I think that's a fear that any parent has. That's a fear that my dad was giving me a lot of lectures about that when I was in college. But I think the crucial part here, it's, we want to make sure that the person with a disability isn't relying on other people for that decision making. And there's a lot that happens, baby steps, but we want to make sure that the person feels empowered to make decisions about how and when they are spending their money. You do not need an attorney to create an ABLE account. They are available in most states, and they're modeled after the Section 529 college savings plans. And I believe most states have a cap of about $15,000 a year on how much you can contribute to the actual ABLE account. And then there is a limit in the life of the ABLE account where I believe, so if you've had an ABLE account open for 3 years, you've been, let's say, contributing $14,000 every year, just make sure that as money is growing in that ABLE account, you're checking in with your state ABLE account to make sure that it's not hitting the limit that the state has established. Because once you hit that larger limit for the life of the ABLE account, it could potentially be suspended. Benefits could be suspended. So we want to make sure that every year you're supporting your loved one with making sure that they're making the choices that they are empowered to do, and that they are being responsible, but also that in general, just with the account management, that changing information, that you're making sure that you all are on top of it, making sure that that limit hasn't been reached. And again, next week, the Georgia ABLE program will be delivering a webinar about the Georgia stable accounts. Special needs trusts, another way for people with disabilities to save without interfering without their benefits. Most, I would say, you do need a lawyer, or at least talk to a nonprofit if you're establishing a pool trust. And again, here's another plug for the webinar on October 19th. The ARC Georgia has a special needs trust, a pool trust, and I know Stacy will be delivering this webinar later on in the month. And so there are two types of special needs trusts. One is the individual trust, which is established privately by the individual, with the person with a disability or the family member. And then the individual trusts are typically managed by a professional trustee or a family member. I do say that if a family member or friend is supporting the person with running that individual trust, that the people really need to stay on top of all the changing laws and taxes and all the rules that sort of regulate the individual trust. And then a pool trust is managed by an organization, and essentially people might not, the individual or the family might not have enough money to start an individual trust. So they, each pool trust has a different starting rate as far as how much money they need to start and open a pool trust. So some are zero, some require at least, a couple $100s. And then the nonprofit manages those pool trusts and the account, and they act as the trustees. So with an ABLE account, the person with the disability typically has like a debit card, and they make the choice on the spot on how they're spending the money. Whereas with the pool trust or an individual trust, the trustee or the nonprofit or that family member is making the decision on when those expenses can be made. So I think that's like the big sort of takeaway here. And, really talk to the ARC Georgia, talk to ABLE account, do a little research on what best fits your family situation. And it's especially important when you're writing, when you're doing estate planning, writing a will. I still see this information and advice to this day where some attorneys, if they are not aware of special needs planning, they tell families, disinherit your son or daughter with a disability. And that's the old school advice, because if you leave them a huge chunk of money, that's going to jeopardize their benefits. That's true, but please do not disinherit your family member with a disability. Make sure that you are setting up a pool trust, a special needs trust, or an ABLE account, whatever vehicle that is, where you can leave the money or those funds to the person in the trust name or in the ABLE account name. So I am not an attorney by practice, but I definitely encourage you to really learn what works best for your family. And you may need one or two, you may need none. So it really depends on the person's situation and the family situation. And then supporting daily and major life decisions. We hear about, I know when person with a disability is nearing adulthood, you hear from teachers, doctors, you need to get guardianship. That is absolutely not true. There are various ways, various options that you need to look into in order to know what best option fits your family. In full disclosure, I am a limited guardian of my sister in the state of California. That was the best option for us. So, there are formal ways, so guardianship, limited guardianship, but also before you get to that, I would, really consider weighing guardianship as that last resort. there are other formal ways that you can support your loved one. So whether that be the power of attorney, representative payee. I know a lot of times with doctors' offices lately, I've been signing medical release forms, HIPAA forms. They don't even ask for my, I might say, I want to get some information. I have some follow-up questions about my sister's doctor appointment. They don't even ask if I'm a guardian anymore. They just say, sign this form. And you're entitled to get that information if your loved one has given you that permission. But there are also informal ways to provide support to your loved one, which is just advice. I mean, I think we all rely on those informal ways from our trusted friends and family to make daily decisions. I know that I informally provide support to my sister on a day-to-day basis. I would say we provide support to each other, especially in the last 7 months. With texting and FaceTime and other technology, even if you're not within living distance of your loved one, technology really helps with making sure that you are part of that person's life and supporting them on a day-to-day basis. And then employment and daily activities. I'm sure everyone here is sort of on the different age range as far as how old your loved one might be. But if your loved one is still in school, what in that IEP can you be talking about with the teachers to start preparing them for adulthood? Start talking to the person, early on about what their hopes and dreams are and what they like to do and what they don't like to do. I know with my sister, I mentioned she ended up being part of a day program where they had a job at a senior center. But prior to that, she was at a restaurant and she was setting up the tables and before the lunch hour, and she hated the job because she loves people. And there are a lot of behavioral issues that were coming out there. She was not going to work on time, or she just wasn't fulfilling her duties, and everyone thought, she's not a good worker. And I said, well, has anyone asked her if she likes her job? We all have bad days. We all have times where when we say, well, we don't like this part of our job, but we like the other part. Same with the person with the disabilities. So once a person is in employment, I think it's important as caregivers to have that ongoing conversation with them about what they like about their job, what they don't like, and if they want to be doing something else in the future. And then making social connections. I think as adults, especially once we're out of high school, we all have fewer opportunities to develop relationships outside of our families or our immediate friend circle. But with people with disabilities, they may have fewer opportunities. So it's really important to start thinking about who are other people in their lives that they have close relationships with, that's outside of their, like a disability service professional or their job coach. Are there people that they have developed relationships with at their local church or through their volunteering or neighbors? So I think over the years, our family has had to be a little bit more creative about this, because even though our cousins live in Southern California, they're in LA and my family's in Orange County. It's about 40 miles, which isn't too far, but with traffic, it can be horrendous. So we've had to really rely on neighbors to, she's developed those relationships now in the last 10 years. And it's been great to see that she can text with them if she needs something. My mom doesn't text, so she always feels left out. But with Crystal, I think it's great because she doesn't really like to talk on the phone. So she's texting. And that's great, because even with me, we get on the phone and she's talks to me for 2 minutes and then she's like, okay, I'll text you later. So, I think just finding ways to stay connected with other people in their life is really important. And now I know we have about 15 minutes left, so I don't want to breathe. I'm going to go through our Center for Future Planning website. Before I go to our website, are there any questions, Stacy, that I need to address before I go through the website? I want to give us some time here, but I also don't want to keep talking if there are any questions. Keep talking if there are a couple questions that you think I should answer at this point.
Right. So this is Stacy Ramirez. I'm loving the conversation and the chat. Dominique and I have been putting in lots and lots of resources.
Okay.
We have on the line. Let's come off real quick because you need to know. So we have on the line Denise Quigley is with the Georgia Advocacy Office, and I'm always shouting out the great work that the Georgia Advocacy Office does. And I put in there specific information on supported decision making while you were talking about guardianship to make sure that we have that. The other things that, and old lady glasses, as my kids call it, um, there was just some conversation, and we were able to enroll our 27-year-old daughter as a volunteer of Meals on Wheels. So some
Oh,
fun
that's
things like
great.
that. Yeah, I thought you'd like that one. We distribute food and visit with other clients. And then since I have the mic, just real quick, we will be sending out the slides with your permission, Liz.
Yes.
And then the recording will be on our YouTube page. So
Perfect.
turn it back over to you.
So this is typically an hour and a half presentation. So apologies if I talked a lot in the beginning, because I want to really share these resources that we developed over 6 years ago. But futureplanning.thearc.org, that's the website. So I'm going to go through walk you through each section so you start to familiarize yourself. But again, the ARC Center for Future Planning was established over 6 years ago. That's the program that brought me to the ARC, and this is the work that I've been doing over this last 6.5 years. And so I was part of the team that developed the website and all of the resources that you see here today. And, you know, when we talk about information and changing information, it's very overwhelming. And so we wanted to make sure that people, when they came to the website, they thought, you know what, this is a really hard topic to chew all at once. I'm at the buffet right now and I just need to like grab pieces of it. So we wanted to make sure that when you went to the website that you felt like, you know what, there are all these resources, but I'm not ready to talk about, you know, to really dive into a topic. So we set up this Learn About Future Planning section. It's a 101. And it really provides an overview of like really the quick picture overview of what I've been talking about today. And so I highly recommend that if anyone doesn't even know what future planning is, start here. And so this is the Learn section of the website. The Who Are You section is, you know, it's the future planning team. So if you're working with, let's say you're a parent and you're working with and there's other siblings involved or other family members or friends, we wanted to make sure that we were addressing all the different people, all the different audiences, to us audiences, but to you, all the people that are involved on the future planning team. First and foremost, the person with the disability. And so and since I'm a sibling, I'm just going to click on sibling. And so you click on the section, and each section is going to discuss why you are critical to the future planning team and what your role is. So if someone's, you know, I think it's a good way for everyone to kind of understand what their role is. And of course, you know, this is not a cookie cutter, you know, if you're a sibling, you have to be involved. I know some siblings don't feel comfortable or don't want to be involved, but I think this is a very high level overview of what the roles are on the future planning team. And then where to start. These are the 6 elements of the plan, which I quickly provided an overview on. So I'm just going to go on housing, deciding where to live. And it, again, provides an overview of everything that the person with a disability and his or her supporters, their supporters, should be thinking through. So when you go to each section, you'll notice that there are going to be videos for each section. So these are videos that we created a couple years ago, about 10 videos that feature people with disabilities, self-advocates that were telling their story about how they were able to plan in, you know, in that specific area. So we had some self-advocates in this video that talked about the importance of supported decision making and sort of how guardianship should always be a last resort. And with housing, we had a couple self-advocates talk about how they were able to plan for housing and how they were able to find a home that they were happy with. So that's the where to start section. And then since I talked about the videos, all our videos, in case you don't, we understand that people may learn better through their visual learners and they want to see the videos. So the see how others have planned section is our video gallery. You will see all the videos that I just quickly talk through in the learn section of the website. So they're sprinkled around in the website, throughout the website, but you can also find them in the see how others have planned section. And then we host quarterly webinars for free. So right now we don't have our schedule up for December, but you can also access all of our previous webinars. They're all archived here for free. You can access them. So I highly encourage you to visit our webinar section, because we really have, we have an advisory council of chapters of the ARC and other caregivers and professionals that help us think through some topics that we should be considering for future webinars. And then also at the bottom of the section, I want to point out that if you don't receive our emails, I highly recommend that you sign up. We're not going to bombard you with emails. We send out emails probably about once or twice a quarter if there's new resources or just information that we want to share with all of you. And then we have a professional services directory. We have a resource directory of different, so let's say state DD agency, and I'll go to Georgia here. You'll get a list of your DD agency, their contact information. So that's our resource directory. And then we have a section that's called an urgent needs section. And this is primarily for individuals that are in that crisis situation, which future planning itself, it's like we're trying to avoid that crisis situation. We're trying to avoid that emergency because really there's more control. I think when you're not in that crisis, there's, you can at least think through the options a little bit more. So the urgent needs section though is meant for someone that might be in that crisis situation and might not have time at the moment to go through the website and learn more about future planning. So this is a quick sort of one place on the website where we kind of provide an overview on where to go if they are in that emergency situation. So the Build Your Plan tool, I'm just logging into my account here, but that section of the website is also for free, and it provides the ability for you to create an account online for free and start your future plan. And so really it's meant to, you'll be taken through, you'll see here the different sections of the plan. So I'm just going to go to Financing the Future. It takes about an hour or two to go through each section. And this, they're already giving me to-dos here. So I'm going to go back. So each section will ask a series of questions. So let's see here. This is the best option. I want to consider public benefits and services. So then based on your response, the system will automatically take you to the next step. So it's almost like a choose your own adventure. So it's very, it's very customized in nature. If you don't have a response or you're not ready to respond to that question, then the system automatically creates, as you saw when I was going through the beginning part, a to-do list. And I'm embarrassed about our to-do list. I should have maybe talked through this a little bit more. We have our plan mostly in paper, and there's still a lot of parts to my sister's plan that we haven't addressed or really thought through more. But what I think maybe didn't mention at the beginning was, this is an ongoing process. I know when I was starting to 15 years ago, really take a more active role in Crystal's life, specifically around future planning and also her day-to-day. I'm a true type A. I want to get it done. I have my to-do list. I want to check, there's nothing more satisfying than checking that to-do list and checking that box. But really, it's an ongoing process. And sometimes in order to check that box, you have to get more information, or you have to reach out to someone to find out more, talk to the loved one that you are supporting. And so it might take a little while to check that box. So the system here, if you are creating your future plan in the Build Your Plan tool, it does create a to-do list for you here that you can reference later on. And then you can also view your plan. And there's ways here for you to view the individual sections, and then view plans that were shared with you. So this is Crystal's plan. There are ways for you, if you want to print out the plan, there's a capability there. You also can share your plans. So the share your plan feature would, that's my husband, would allow me, since I'm the driver of my sister's plan is on this account, to add his email, add his name, and then include a message, and then share a specific part of the plan. So I'm going to go back to view plan shared so you can see what I mean. So you would hit share plan. The person would get an email with that specific section of the plan. They would be brought to this section of the Build Your Plan tool, and then the system would allow them to make comments on the plan and not edit the plan. We wanted to make sure that, let's say the person with the disability is the driver, or the parent, or whoever the driver is, that there was some type of version control. So, 5 people were not going in there and changing around sections of the plan without the person's permission and without talking to them. So instead, we created this comments feature. I will go back to, and I think that's it. I wanted to quickly go back to the presentation here. Jumping all over the place. Are there any questions about the Build Your Plan tool?
So I'm not seeing any in the chat just now, but I did get 1 or 2 private messages about the appreciation, and I posted it to everyone, the appreciation to your honesty, that you as the expert, we have to remind ourselves to stay on top of it. This stuff is not hard, but it's not easy, right?
Right.
It's persistence.
It's doable. And I wanted to feature here, and these are also available on our website, resources in plain language. When we first started the website 6 years ago, we started with the Learn section. Then we created the Build Your Plan tool. Then, we have self-advocates on our advisory council that said, this is great, but, I think lower literacy levels are really important, especially for people with disabilities that might be drivers of the plan or also in general, people have various literacy levels. So we did create plain language documents, and they are in the Learn section of the website. And again, sprinkled throughout the Learn section of that part of the website. We also have the videos. We also have, and I'm gonna go back because I'm very proud of this as a Spanish speaker. We created a Spanish language page. I wish that we could translate the whole website in Spanish. But if a funder that is willing to drop some money on my lap today, point them in my direction. But for some reason, I can't see the Spanish. I'm going to send that to you, Stacy, for anyone that's a Spanish speaker. We do have a Spanish section of the webpage, and I don't know why it's not coming up here. I think we've had some changes to the website. We're always making changes to the website, so sometimes technology can play some tricks on us.
Right. And I'm keeping an eye on the time, so we're at time. And I did want to do some shout outs to you, Liz, that having the step-by-step planning tool is outstanding. From the Georgia Advocacy Office, again, Denise quickly said this has been excellent, which that just makes me so proud. future seminar, I'll look at some other where we get links to what we were sharing. So Dominique and I will compile all this information and send it back out. We're going to ask for you to do a really quick survey because we want to make sure we're doing the best information we can. Did I hear someone shout out as we finish up? So we're going to end on that, and
Okay.
want to give you last word, Liz. Thank you so much.
Sure. So you'll have the slides. So my contact information is at the end of the slides. I know Stacy and Dominique, I want to give a shout out to them because they are fearless leaders. We are very lucky to have their leadership in the network. I love doing what I do because of, one, these type of presentations, but also because of the leaders that we have around our chapter network. So thank you very much. I know there was a lot of information, but hopefully you'll be able to take the time to go through it. And you have my contact information. So, you can reach out to Stacy and Dominique, or if you have any specific questions about today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I love talking to other family members and people with disabilities. This is really important information. So it's doable. It can be hard, but it's doable.
Thank you so much.
Join us for the next 3, where we'll dig down deeper.
Yes.
Appreciate you, Liz.
Yeah, I really appreciate this.
You're welcome, Anita. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Happy early Halloween.
And thank you, Dominique Smith. You rock.
You're welcome.